Welcome to our July webinar, a collaborative presentation of the Federation for Children with Special Needs and the Recruitment Training and Support Center, RTSC. I'm Eileen Sandberg, Training and Support Specialist for the RTSC. Today's webinar is on the role of the Special Education Parent Advisory Council, presented by Leslie M. Leslie. She's the Project Director for CPAC and Apple here at the Federation for Children with Special Needs. Leslie provides technical assistance to both Special Education Parent Advisory Councils, or CPACs, and to district special education administrators. CPAC coordinates leadership training and networking opportunities for parent leaders, coordinates statewide CPAC listserv, and maintains a statewide database and website. Leslie represents the Federation on numerous statewide coalitions and advisory groups, as well as providing support for the Link Center at FCSM. Leslie directs the annual Apple Institute, which assists school district teams in building an action plan to support family engagement. Welcome, Leslie.
Thank you, Eileen, and welcome to the Federation. I know Eileen from her prior CPAC work and as a CPAC leader, and it's just great to have you here. So thank you very much, and thank you for that introduction. I just wanted, for those of you who are new to the Federation, we are a nonprofit organization in Massachusetts that supports families of children with special needs, regardless of their disability type. And so today I'm talking about the role of a Special Education Parent Advisory Council, or CPAC as we call them here in Massachusetts. So today my objectives, hopefully you will learn the purpose of a CPAC, understand family engagement and the benefits of a CPAC, define CPAC structure and operational proceedings, also really to talk about the role of a CPAC. It has a specific role in the law in Massachusetts, and then go over some ways that a CPAC operates in systems. Wow, here we go. So what's so important is that CPACs in Massachusetts have a seat at the table. They're the advisory group to a school committee talking about the programs, the policies, the practices and services that families receive. And it's very unique in that the families that are affected by the services and the programs are giving direct feedback to the school. What's working, what's not working. What's interesting is they're not required under IDEA. It's not a federal mandate. This is something that came up driven by families and attorneys and community leaders to have families have a seat at the table in local school districts. So there is an actual law in Massachusetts that requires that every school district have a CPAC, and they run independently and individually. Every school district runs a little differently to meet the needs of the families. So they set their own bylaws and operational proceedings. They have such an opportunity to have an impact to support families, both families that are in the system currently and the families that are coming into the system with new students with special needs. So they're really not policymakers, but offering advice to the policymakers. What we're finding is that this is supported by a whole round of research around family engagement. When families and schools and communities all work together, students do better in schools. They stay in school longer, they learn more. It's just where the research is leading us. Those partnerships are so key. And we are very pleased here at the Federation that we have just been granted this past fall a federal statewide family engagement center grant that we're working together with the Department of Education, Department of Elementary and Secondary Education here in Massachusetts and other organizations to bring out best practices around family engagement. And it's at the root of what a CPAC does. It's engaging families to get involved in their school and to provide feedback. So we just thought we'd try something today. Hopefully technology will help us out. And we're going to have a poll so that you'll have an opportunity to let us know how your school district engages families. So hopefully we can bring up the poll. It's just one question for you to answer around family engagement. So our question today is, how does your school district support family engagement? And some of the opportunities for multiple choice here, you can check as many as are appropriate. Do you have an active CPAC? Are there volunteer opportunities for parents? Are parents on advisory boards? Are there events for families? And is there regular two-way communication between schools and families? So we're finding that schools that are directly involving families and asking them what they need and how they should be supported is really the best method, rather than just stating that we're going to have an open house on Thursday at 9 a.m. Well, that's not going to work for working families. Or we're going to meet every Thursday night, and if that's not good for your family, you're working that evening, you know, we need to have some flexibility around scheduling time, even methods of communication. With online learning, there's so many opportunities for families to connect to schools. I know educators are using lots of different platforms to connect with their families, having online classrooms, responding to texts and email. There's lots of opportunities for families to connect. So, do we have our poll results yet? So here are our results. I think the largest two responses are active CPAC and events for families, volunteer opportunities, and regular two-way communications come in around 30%, and parents on advisory boards about less than half. So you can see we have some work to do because these should all be available to families. This should all be opportunities within a school system for families to engage, not only through their CPAC, but through other opportunities within the school system. And that's all families, not just a chosen few. So that's where we're trying to move in family engagement, is to get all families to be involved. So if we can move on and close the results out. Thank you. So some of the benefits of an effective CPAC, it's just not a meeting once a month. It's getting embedded into the whole school system. And they can provide so many different ways to improve a school system. They are key with outreach and reaching families with disabilities. They can help start those positive relationships between families and schools. Sometimes the IEP process and special education evaluation and determination can be a little contentious. And so having the CPAC help families understand the system and so they can be a better part of it, that works better. Collaborative problem solving. There are lots of problems in school districts, and coming together and having parents be involved in the problem solving, I think, is so important. Having a system change direct from input from parents. Parents can give great feedback when something isn't working for their students. And why should we be spending all of this money on programs that don't work? So having schools listen to parents and be part of that system change is really important. They're also a trusted source of information. I always recommend that CPAC officers bring their problems directly to the people in the school system that can make that change. So whether it's the special education administrator, a principal, or the superintendent, or even the school committee, is bring the problem forward as soon as they're aware of it, and let the people whose job it is to run the school system start to work on those problems. They're a great conduit for information. So if there's a change in the system or change in the way some of the services are going to be delivered, CPACs are great to be that information exchange. So information can go down from schools to families and also up from families to schools. They're that conduit. Hopefully we're getting improved services and programs as a result of all this collaboration. But I think the key word in this whole process is trust. When school systems trust the information that parents bring to them, they'll listen. And same way it goes back and forth. And when CPACs trust the school administrators with the information that they're bringing to them, then they feel like they're part of that system. So that's the benefits of having a CPAC in your community. And so this mindset that values the advice of parents, I believe, is key to an effective CPAC. So who can be a CPAC member? The law is interesting that it welcomes all families of children with disabilities, but it also involves other interested parties. And those interested parties could be anyone who's working and supporting a student. Students on IEPs, 504 plans, they're not on an educational plan, but they're receiving accommodations within school due to their disability. Students that families that might be in early intervention or not identified. And we also welcome special education surrogate parents. These are parents that are supporting students that are in DCF custody, state custody, and need a parent to be at that IEP meeting. And I always suggest that SESPs, the student that they are working with may not be from the surrogate parents' home district. So they're in a new school system and a new district. And really the best way for them to get connected, understand how the system works, understand like school cultures, resources within that district, is to get connected to the CPAC. And the law says you can be a part of it because you're an interested party and you're supporting a student in that district. Foster parents are also welcome. It's really anyone who's interested and wants to move this initiative forward on advising the school district around special education. So it is a very broad membership. The CPAC has been deemed to be a public body because they're advisors to the school district. So if you want to know when those meetings are, an agenda is published at the town hall or on the district website. You'll know what the CPAC's talking about, minutes will be taken, and those will be made available so you can follow the CPAC and its formal meetings, usually online or upon request to the CPAC or school district to find out what the items of discussion are. So it is a public body and has to follow open meeting law. And I said earlier that each CPAC operates independently and locally. So they establish their own bylaws and how they operate. They're all very different. Cambridge operates very different from Gloucester, from Dennis Yarmouth and South Hadley. It's regional, it's size of school, it's school culture, and they all set up. We recommend at MassPAC that they kind of set out a mission statement so people know what they're all about. They make their bylaws available so people know how they operate. They describe the roles of their officers so you know who does what and what the role of people are, that they should develop communication tools. We know how important, how key it is to get the message out through various media and communication tools, how they run their meetings, how they keep their records. The membership lists of parents of children with special needs is a confidential list. And so they can only keep records of those families that step forward and ask to be identified. So getting the message out sometimes is a little bit difficult to CPACs. A lot of them use Facebook pages now, and more families join Facebook. And they also should be making partnerships. The CPAC is a very unique body in that it represents students from the whole district, not just one school like a PTO or PTA. They also represent all different ages, all different disability types, and really the best CPAC has representation from all of those different communities so that it can give robust feedback to the district. The CPAC is also asked to cooperate with the school district because under the law that established CPACs, there's also an obligation for the district to have an annual workshop on the rights of families. It's a pretty complicated system, and new families coming into school systems and trying to go to their first IEP meeting, they need some background. And so the law envisions that there'll be an annual rights workshop, and CPACs are asked to cooperate and get families there so they can share that information. The Federation for Children with Special Needs has a basic rights workshop, which we have go out to over 110 school districts last year. And those are free and open to the public, so anyone can attend those workshops. They're on our website, and you can see when they're held, and you can just show up that evening and attend that workshop. CPACs have two guidance documents that help them in their role as CPACs. One is the guidance for special education parent advisory councils that's put out by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. We're going through a process right now to update that. It's almost 10 years old, and the internet's been invented since then. So we do have to kind of bring it up to date and talk about social media and some other things. And there's another new guide, that's a national guide. It's called Advocacy in Action. It just came out this past fall. The link is right there. You can also just Google National CPAC Guide. You'll find it on the parentcenterhub.org. There's also a link on the MassPAC website. That's another new guidance document. Lots of great tips on how CPAC should operate and function, and some interesting worksheets are in there also, like how to keep minutes and set an agenda. So these are tools that help a CPAC do its job. The key question that I always get at MassPAC is, how do we get more families to come to our meetings? And I really think it's getting the word out that you are an organization or a body that supports families. A lot of people don't know about you, so you have to kind of make it known. What's your communication strategy? How are you getting the word out? How are you working with the school district to use their systems to notify families of upcoming events? Reaching out to diverse communities, non-English speaking families. Are materials being translated into other languages to meet the needs of the families in your district? Most CPACs now have a social media presence. Facebook is free. That's where families are. So you run a Facebook page. You have a parent support group that operates a little bit outside of the formal CPAC meeting, where families can come together and share resources and share experiences and share concerns. That's a great place for CPACs to hear what's happening and what some of the concerns of families are, so that they can bring that back to a formal CPAC meeting, and it might rise up to an issue that they will prioritize to bring forward to a school committee in their advisory role. You need flexible meeting times. Not everyone's available at 9 in the morning or at 7 o'clock on Tuesday night. How are you making your meeting schedule fit the needs of your families? And also, CPACs use surveys and needs assessment tools, usually in collaboration with the district, to get information from families as to what are the workshops that they might need to have families feel like they can participate more.
We do have a question. Is there anything that states that if your child has an out-of-district placement that you can no longer be a CPAC chair?
No, nothing that I've heard. The law is pretty simple as to who can be a CPAC member. And so it's a parent of a child with special needs, but that person would definitely qualify. They could always be an interested party. You need to look to the CPAC bylaws, because the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and the law allows local control. So I always ask that somebody has a question on, can I do this, is look at the bylaws. The bylaws in that local community might be restrictive. I would think that Any parent is probably qualified to serve as a CPAC officer, but I don't know. I looked at the local rules. I can't see why. What's interesting of parents of children in out-of-district placements, they can also be a member of their of a PAG, a Parent Advisory Group, which is an advisor to the private school. And so the parents there have their own advisory body, but there's nothing precluding them from being part of the local CPAC. So I hope I answered that question. And
do we have another question?
I have another one.
What if your district does not have a CPAC? We usually have a one-time rights and regulations meeting offered, but have not had a CPAC in years.
Okay. So you call Mass PAC. The districts are required to have a CPAC, but it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. If parents don't step up to form the CPAC, it's difficult for the district. So a lot of times I will work with both parents and the district to form a CPAC. Sometimes there is a functioning CPAC and the leaders age out of the system. Their students age out of the system. And so there might be a complete turnover and there's an interim period where there isn't a CPAC. I need parents to step up and form the CPAC. It's a parent advisory council. It shouldn't be run by the school district. It can be supported by the school district, but it can't be run by them. So I need parents. So if you are a parent working in living in a school district that doesn't have an active CPAC, please contact me, and I'm happy to come out and work with families to get it started. It's so interesting that as a parent of a child with special needs, I was challenged with navigating school for my family and community events for my family and athletic events for my family. And so we asked these same families to step up and run a CPAC. It's challenging, I get that, but it's also very rewarding. And I think that it was one of the best experiences I had as a parent with my sons going through school, connecting with other parents, having an opportunity to influence some of the programming at the school, making positive changes. I think some of the frustrations that families feel can be alleviated when they become active in changing the system. And this is the opportunity for parents to do that. Every school district should have a CPAC, and I'm happy to help you. That's what I do here. I have a couple slides on specifically what the law says your role of the CPAC is, going back to the title of our talk here. You really have three primary roles under the law. Most people know CPACs by some of the events or workshops or the support groups that they run, but that's really not what the law says. The law says your activities shall include, but not be limited to, advising the school committee, meeting regularly with school officials, and participating in the planning, development, and evaluation of special education programs. I'm going to dive into each one of those areas a little bit more closely. So advising the school committee. If you don't know what an advisory group is, there's a wonderful curriculum called Serving on Groups. The link is here, servingongroups.org. It's a free online curriculum, very easy to use, and can help you understand the role of different decision-making groups. And an advisory group provides advice. The boards will review your recommendations, but they are not required to follow them. And that sometimes is frustrating for CPACs, but at least you're bringing the idea to the tables. So you can make recommendations. Sometimes they might ask you for some background on an issue. You can do a pro and con kind of statement or fact sheet for a district. And you can also pose questions so that the board is moving in the right direction around an issue.
Question. When meeting regularly with school officials, does that need to be part of the open meeting law, or is it an unofficial meeting?
So it depends. It's my politically correct. I have a slide on meeting with the board, with school officials. The open meeting law requires that when there's a quorum of the public body together, then that is a requirement that it must be an open meeting. So I think there's some allowance of local practice also. So if less than a quorum, say 2 of the officers or 1 of the officers is meeting regularly with the school officials, then you're not in violation of the open meeting law. You could also make all of those meetings public and post the agenda. I don't think thousands of people are going to show up at 11 a.m. to meet with the SPED administrator to discuss those issues. But that's a practice that some CPACs do. So we always encourage CPACs to follow the open meeting law. The issues that are discussed when they meet regularly with school officials are probably discussed at the CPAC meeting of like, hey, let's bring this issue to the administrator or whatever. But sometimes things come up in an emergency basis where over the weekend, a CPAC officer might learn of something that is very troubling, and they might ask to meet with a special administrator first thing Monday morning and go in and meet. That's all good best practice, and also reporting on what happened in those meetings should happen at a formal public body open meeting situation. But if there are less than the quorum meeting regularly with school officials, then I think that is not a violation of open meeting law, and that can happen. And I think that's the most effective way that that happens, that it's a much more of an informal process. So I talked about advising the school district. I think I just want to talk a little bit about individual versus systemic issues. The CPAC is not a body that will advocate for one family or bring one family's issues forward unless they see it as a special circumstance or something that is indicative of a system-wide problem. So they don't do individual advocacy. They don't sit in at an IEP meeting. They don't act as an advocate in that role. But they should be listening to things that might be system-wide. It could be a busing issue. It could be a lunchroom issue, a bullying issue on the playground. You know, what's happening in the schools that they want to give a voice to and move forward in an advisory capacity, bring forward to a school official, bring forward to a principal or school committee, those systemic issues. They're collecting personal stories all the time, but that helps inform them as to what they will prioritize as issues that they bring in front of a school committee. So that's the difference between individual versus systemic advocacy. So meeting regularly, I just have some examples of how you would do that. A lot of times they might meet monthly with the special ed administrator. Sometimes it's quarterly. Might depend on the time that the administrator has and the size of the district. Some superintendents have parent group forums where all of the parent group leaders, the fine arts chair, the athletic boosters, parent leader, and as long as the PTA and PTO leaders all get together. I think that's a wonderful forum for CPACs to join and coordinate some of the activities with other organizations within the school parent groups. They can attend, anyone can attend school committee meetings. It's another big commitment. Sometimes they ask a school committee member to be a liaison between the CPAC and the school committee, so that way the information is exchanging on a regular basis. You're building those relationships with the people that need to hear what the CPAC has to say. And that takes a while, and you need to do that on a regular basis. We also encourage the CPAC to have some type of an annual report, whether it be in writing, a PowerPoint presentation, or just going in front of the school committee at least once per year to kind of do the state of the CPAC, the state of issues around special education so that that occurs on a regular basis.
Leslie,
And I think we have a couple questions.
We do. And I think this one gets to the heart of the matter for a lot of issues. What does a CPAC do if they keep trying to speak with administration about a bus van issue, but no one is doing anything about the situation?
So I always encourage that if there is a violation of an IEP or a violation of the law, that is pursued very vigorously by a family so that the student receives the appropriate services and is safe at all times. So I'm just putting that on the table. So a CPAC could help a family identify resources that they could pursue to support them as an individual family. But if it's a systemic issue, then I think you need to keep knocking on those doors. I remember going as a CPAC officer, going to my special ed administrator and saying, you know, I've been saying this for a while and I don't think you're hearing me. I just want to let you know I'm going up to the superintendent. And then saying the same thing to the superintendent. I don't think you're hearing me. I want to take that to the school committee. So it rises up to a higher body and gets the opportunity to have that addressed. It also puts it then more in the public forum and public light so that maybe the community can come together to help resolve some of these issues. It's an advisory body, so they don't have to follow it. But I think if something is brought to light that seems troublesome, you know, you don't want to abuse your role as a CPAC, but bringing every little thing up to the school committee. But when it's important and when safety of students are involved, I see getting the community involved in public forum as a positive thing, as a way to have community dialogue around an issue. I'm not saying it's easy.
And the person who sent that comment notes that it's a systemic issue. She has been knocking for just about the past year.
So there are other places to get support around that. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has a problem resolution system. I think PRS is called system. And you can call them and they can get involved and they can talk to the school and see if they're in compliance with the law. There are other Disability Law Center, DLC, Mass Advocates for Children. There are some advocacy organizations that specifically help families navigate some of these difficult situations. But you shouldn't go a year if the safety of several students are involved. And that might mean encouraging those families to come together and sit down with the superintendent and maybe whoever's in charge of busing in the district to bring those issues to a higher priority.
We have another question. What types of information should be included in the annual report?
That depends. On the MassPAC website, we have a section on annual reporting. I always used to reference a report from a CPAC officer from Bridgewater Raynham. And I always said to him, what did you do this year? I mean, I don't know how you had a full-time job and wrote this report. It was very inclusive that he would bring up issues and how they had brought them forward and actions that had been taken and things that had worked and things that hadn't worked. I mean, it was a 20-page report and it was a little over the top, but it was a best practice. But I don't think most people will do that. The annual report should be around a couple of issues that the CPAC saw as coming forward that were systemic within the system, how they brought forward the information, how the school district responded. Hopefully the school district responded well and there was a good outcome. And in the annual report, you're celebrating that systemic change that made it possible for families to get better services or have better access to whatever they needed. So hopefully that annual report is a mix of here's a challenge that we're still facing and here's some of the successes we have. It's always good for CPACs to recognize that the school district is moving forward and is responding. Change is slow, and so that's difficult, I think, that systems move slowly, and sometimes it could mean that it's going to take a year to see that change. There are several CPACs that are sharing their PowerPoint presentations. People who want to see samples of what an annual report looks like, either in writing or in a PowerPoint, I have a couple, and the CPACs that have shared them allow me to share them with you. So I'm happy to do that also. It's always nice to have a model of what one looks like, and then just make it work for your district, and realize that you have to highlight your most important thing because you only have a limited time in front of the school committee. They have a lot of things on their plate. So we talked about annual reports. I think the thing that is most challenging for districts is how do we involve CPACs to participate in the planning, development, and evaluation of programming. As a CPAC officer, I sat on a reading group when we were bringing a new reading program to the district. The reading program that I was in favor of was not adopted by the district, so that was frustrating, but it was a group process. It was a robust process, and I trusted the process, and I was a participant in that. And I think school districts, as part of their family engagement practices, need to figure out how to involve CPACs in different initiatives that they're doing. And it could be researching issues, being part and supporting needs assessments or different assessments around issues, making recommendations, conducting trainings around a new initiative. The social emotional curriculums that schools are adopting and have to adopt by law are new to families. So how do you highlight what the district is doing and help families understand new initiatives so they can become really involved in the whole process of rolling out something new. They're collecting data all the time, and schools can ask them to collect specific data, helping them with action plans, and then providing that feedback, that monitoring, how this is going, how is this rolling out, how's it working, that constant back and forth. So I just ask that school districts set aside a seat at the table for a CPAC officer, especially around special education programming. Any other questions right now? Or?
Well, no, we had a comment that an annual report from a CPAC is available at www.nspac.org if anyone wants to view it.
And it sounds like Northborough, Southborough CPAC, which is a very active CPAC. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Really the success of the CPAC hinges on the shape input from all the things it's collecting from families and people that are using the system. They need to prioritize and come up with what's the concrete issue that we want to bring forward. They have to use the time in front of the decision makers well, and know that resources from the district are going to be put into any new initiatives and new directions, so that how can we do this? How can we make things happen? Because we want to see positive change in the district. The CPAC is that positive force for change, and its role in the district is only as good as the relationships it builds with the district and its credibility that it brings to the table as being that voice of all of the families in the district, and wanting to have really better outcomes for students and families. That's the goal. So that's kind of where we're ending up. I just wanted to before we take the last question, talk about MassPAC a little. MassPAC is a project at the Federation for Children with Special Needs. We're just celebrating our 10th year here at the Federation, providing information, training, and networking opportunities, which I think is a new initiative that's being picked up by some CPAC officers on a regional basis on their Facebook groups. There's lots of mentoring and support. You can see sharing of materials. So then anyone who's new to a CPAC or new as an officer has a lot of best friends and a lot of support, not only from the Federation, but from other CPACs. We have a website. I answer email and phone every day. It's all about working with your district to help families. So if you want to learn a little bit more about MassPAC, you can go to the Federation's website, and there's a project there.
We have a couple more questions. What happens if a district asks for your involvement, but as you're on the committee, you realize the decision has already been made and the committee is just for show?
So I think that's difficult. I would personally voice my concern to whoever set up the committee of why this wasn't a good opportunity for input. Maybe ask for an additional opportunity for input. Sometimes decisions are made for other reasons. There's limitations of resources within districts. I think if you're uncomfortable or unhappy with something, that you take the opportunity to let the people know in charge why this wasn't a good use of your time, because this is people's time too. When you sit on boards and go to meetings and do some research, and then to find out that all is kind of not part of that decision-making process. I think it's frustrating. I think I might suggest that the CPAC sit down with the district and talk about how their involvement is so important and how to set up a better structure in the future.
And the last question is the school district's job interview committee for the district considered being involved in planning?
And can you repeat that again?
Is the school district's job interview committee for the district considered being involved in planning?
So I'm just trying to clarify. A lot of CPACs sit on a interview team or hiring team for the special ed administrator, sometimes for the superintendent, and are part of that process. Is that involved in participating in evaluations programs? No, it's a hiring role. I think there should be another opportunity for CPACs to be involved in as the law states, participate in the planning, evaluation, and development of programs. And hiring is a little bit different. It's nice that they're involved in the hiring of personnel within the school district that are important to CPACs and special ed families.
And another question, are you aware of any CPACs that have been the subject of alleged open meeting law violations? Has the AG investigated or pursued any complaints against CPACs for open meeting law violations? School committee is hyper-focused on open meeting laws and is having a chilling effect on the CPAC.
Fun questions today. So when I started my CPAC many years ago, in my community, we did not follow the open meeting law. It wasn't part of the process. The process was a little different. And so it has now come under a determination by the Attorney General's Office and the Division of Open Government that CPACs are public bodies, or may be public bodies. The executive elected board is a public body. And they are required to follow the open meeting law. That said, there's really no open meeting law police or jail time, usually. The there have been instances where there have been complaints filed against a CPAC regarding violation of the open meeting law. Those are investigated usually by the Division of Open Government, the school committee, and the CPAC. There's a formal response process. And depending on what the violation is, sometimes it's that a vote was taken not at a public formal meeting, or some decision was made. So the remedy will be that you go back and you do it and you follow the open meeting law in the process. The whole premise behind the open meeting law is to have open involvement in decision making, to have transparency. And I think it's good that CPACs file an agenda, follow the agenda, and have an open process where the public is invited, and that minutes are written so that there's a documentation of their activities. But their reasons for having formal votes is specific to the role of the CPAC. The events and the topics and the workshops that CPACs do are outside of their formal role. And so they can meet a group of parents and decide how they're going to run a resource fair, or a game day for kids in the gym, because it's outside their formal role of the CPAC. It's just activities that are kind of our offshoot. The same way as parents can meet as a support group outside of a formal CPAC meeting, because it's a support group. It's not the role of meeting regularly or participating in the planning and development of programming.
So yes, there have been violations, or at least complaints around violations. Sometimes I'm involved, sometimes I'm contacted, but I'm not part of that process. I do advise CPACs on how to follow the law. Most times I refer them to the Division of Open Government, which is the regulatory body around that.
We have a couple
Those are
more
the fun
questions.
things I deal with every day.
We have a few questions. Hopefully a quick one. Is there a directory maintained by MassPAC of CPAC officers in local communities so regional efforts can be coordinated?
So the CPAC officers, so I have a database of hopefully, all of the school districts in Massachusetts and their contacts. Not every CPAC has an online presence. I do have a more robust information around CPAC officers are the ones that join MassPAC and complete an application. So I have their email and phone. Most of them share their private phone, a home phone or a cell phone, and their private email. And I do not share those. I use that for MassPAC purposes only. If a CPAC wants, or a parent wants to get connected to a community, I usually ask the CPAC, can I share your email? A lot of them have established a generic, info at CPAC, info CPAC at Gmail, so that we have an email that can be shared that's generic, that's not a person's email. For regional purposes, all the time, I'm connecting to CPACs. The email comes out from my office to those CPACs saying, would you like to join this group, or somebody wants to connect to you, or whatever. Sometimes a family will call and say, I'm thinking of moving into a district and I'd like to talk to parents. I do the same thing. I act as that conduit between the CPAC and the interested party to be able to get permission to share the emails. So I don't keep a directory. I also find that every year there's a turnover with CPAC officers. So anything I created would have a very limited lifespan. And so we're here, we have a database, please connect with me, and I will connect CPACs all the time.
Okay. What would it look like for CPAC to be involved in the evaluation of a program?
That depends on the school district and the school district's reasons for what their expectations are around evaluations. And I think a CPAC should really sit down with the school district and say, what do you see my role here is? What's the role of everybody sitting on this evaluation committee? Set out some guidelines, first of all, and work with them so then that way it can meet the needs of the CPAC and the district altogether. So set your parameters out at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to actually combine two questions here because I think they're related. What do you suggest CPACs can do when there's only one officer and other parents are not willing to step up? Can the CPAC leverage this to request more support from the district to encourage parents to serve as officers, and how so? And the second question is, I'm still trying to understand the role of the district in helping to create a CPAC. As one parent, I do not have access to those parents who may want to join. I am also not in a position to become an officer, but I am eager to become a member. It would appear that our district is not interested in assisting to form a CPAC.
How to answer? So when there's only one parent that steps forward, I think it's challenging for families to take on the role of chair. I suggest co-chairs or tri-chairs. I know as a parent, there were nights that it just wasn't possible for me to go out in the evening due to my family's needs and concerns, and I needed to have someone else run an event, a meeting, whatever. So having multiple people, there's nothing to say that you have to have a chair. You write your own bylaws and your operational procedures. So you can have a leadership team, you can have a CPAC coalition, a council. Set up what works for your district. There is that reticence for people to take on a leadership role. So having an advisory board that people have rotating roles might be the way that you practice and the way that you can get more people involved. The district should be supporting outreach because they have access to the emails, addresses. They might have systems where there's robot calls and emails that go out. They should be doing that and really practicing the same kind of support that they do for PTOs and PTAs, organizations and groups within the district. They can't force people to come to the table. So that is a slowly building type of process. I also suggest that CPACs go to the principals' coffees and start to enlist principals in this. The principals attend the play and the football game and the concert. So why can't they come to the CPAC meeting? Why can't they bring a couple of parents with them? Why can't they encourage that type of participation families within their schools? There are a couple of ways to do that. So if there is a parent out there that's interested in starting or building a CPAC, please contact me. I've also gone out and done a workshop, done a conversation, and talked and maybe dispelled some of the concerns or help parents around some of the barriers to participation. I know it's very difficult for non-English speaking families to access an English speaking only group. So are there other ways that we can do this within school districts? So there's no right answer. There's no easy answer. It's a process where you have to slowly build. Parents will get involved as if they see that this is valuable for them. I got involved and it became very valuable to me and my family to be connected with other parents, to be able to meet with school on issues that were systemic issues that I saw as a family, but also I saw others having, and then to make a better system for all families. It helped my family, helped me and my family as I was going through, and I think that's what CPACs have to start, that practice of this is going to help families, and it's important for you to become involved.
We have a couple quick ones, and then we will wrap up. The question was, I'm sorry, I didn't see this question. There was a question about conducting CPAC meetings via Zoom or similar web-based programs.
So if it's a formal CPAC meeting, the Attorney General's office has allowed remote participation, but only if your school district has adopted that. It's a town-wide. If the town has adopted remote participation, you can, and it's really only in kind of extraordinary circumstances, and that's probably something that you need to work out locally within your school district, and also then run it by the Attorney General's office, the methodology that happens. Doesn't mean that you can't have your educational workshops kind of broadcast by local cable TV or captured by Zoom and then seen at a different time. So there's different standards for things outside of the formal public body meeting.
Mm-hmm. And our last question is, what if the district is only sending out the information to the same few parents of their choice?
So can you repeat that again?
What if the district is only sending out information, I'm presuming about forming a CPAC, to the same few parents of their choice?
So I would first of all question, how would you know that? You know, the request should come from parents interested in forming a CPAC to the school district. Can you send these to all families? And then they need to bring data points back to the district of why some families didn't get the notice. Because otherwise, there's that trusting relationship again. Do you trust the district to disseminate your information? If it's not happening, I think you need to bring that information to the appropriate people to make a change. And that might be the superintendent, to say, wow, you know, we're finding that our message isn't getting out, and how can we work together to make sure that message is getting out. CPACs will slowly start to build their own email list and their own forums for dialogue, and that could be also a Facebook group, and just do it on their own, get the message out. Cable TV is great. They usually want free programming. They'll come and record a workshop and have that available on their platform. So you just need to get the message out.
Okay.
So I just have a slide here that this is my email address at the Federation. You can also email me at masspac@fcsn.org, and just a little bit of something about what's coming up for RTSC's project.
Great. Thank you, Leslie. That was extremely helpful. I'd like to remind everyone that you will be receiving a follow-up survey, which we ask you to complete. We value this information so that we can provide everyone with the most effective information to support the wonderful work that you do in supporting children. Save the date for the RTSC's 8th Annual Making a Difference Conference. It's on Tuesday, November 19th, 2019, and I believe registration will open in August. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us and for asking your questions, and we hope to see you again next month. This is RTSC.